Benvinguts al Col·legi d'Arquitectes de Catalunya. En primer lloc, volia donar-vos les gràcies a tothom per la vostra assistència, ja sigui en línia o presencialment. Des del Col·legi d'Arquitectes celebrem acollir avui aquí els autors de la instal·lació Never Demolish de Ilka i Andreas Ruby, que transforma el Pavelló Mies en un espai domèstic que recorda els 530 habitatges rehabilitats per Lacaton Vassal, Frédéric Druot i Christophe Hutin al Grand Parc Bordeaux, que va ser l'obra guanyadora del Premi d'Arquitectura Contemporània de la Unió Europea, Premi EU Mies Award. I poder celebrar aquesta fantàstica taula rodona sobre intervencions en els habitatges socials a gran escala, que per nosaltres és sempre una gran notícia. I aquest va ser un molt bon exemple d'una gran rehabilitació dirigida a millorar la qualitat de vida de les persones. Aquest tipus d'arquitectura és una renovació urbana a escala de barri. Una cosa que va moltíssim més lluny i afecta no només a les característiques d'habitabilitat, sinó que es tracta d'una transformació estètica, social i cultural. L'objecte de l'exposició és, ara, el centre de Bordeus. Aquesta intervenció tracta de doblar l'existent i d'aprofitar les condicions inicials, de dignificar-les. En aquest procés es treballa amb l'existent i se li dona no només una dignitat, sinó una majestuositat que no tenia. De fer així que no només conti, sinó que li doni representativitat. És molt més que una adequació. Aquesta transformació és una proposta que podria fer que Mies n'estigués orgullós, ja que lliga amb l'esperit del pavelló, del que va ser un embrió i ara és social, sostenible i just. Lacaton Vassal, els autors, són els arquitectes del moment. El Pritzker els avala i la Fundació ICO els ha dedicat una gran retrospectiva, que us recomano visitar. Aquesta obra, objecte de l'exposició, és ara Premi EU Mies Award també. Això és bo perquè consagra aquesta manera d'actuar, creant escola. L'exposició celebra tot això i ho converteix en una proposta cultural de primer ordre. Espero que disfruteu de la taula rodona i moltes gràcies.
Thank you, Guim, and thank you to the Order of Architects for hosting this event. And without no delay, I would like to give the floor to Andreas Ilka Ruby. Please, the stage is yours.
Can you bring the... Yeah. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're very happy, and I will also dive directly into the topic because we have a very tight schedule here. So the exhibition is called Never Demolish, and before we start talking about the exhibition, we have to talk a little bit about the project that is exhibited. It's a project by the architects sitting here from Bordeaux, a transformation of 530 apartments. And the whole project started basically with a deconstruction. It was called an urban renewal program from the French in France, but in the end it was a destruction program. And Anne Lacaton, Jean-Philippe, and Frédéric Druot, in response to that, they did the study plus, where they showed and proved and really developed ideas how these buildings, instead of demolishing them, how they could be transformed. This is almost 20 years ago when that started, and only in the last years they were able to realize these projects. First Tour Bois-le-Prêtre in Paris, and then the project we exhibited in the pavilion from Bordeaux. And here you see a before and after the transformation image, this kind of collage. You can see these were the buildings, how they looked before, and this is how it looks now. And I want to go a little bit into the ground plan. I hope you can see this. This is the ground plan before, and the kind of transformation they did was they took away the existing facade and they replaced it not only with a new facade, but with a new space, which is a kind of winter garden space, 3 meter deep. So people not only got more space, more light, it is also, in terms of energy, the building works better now, because this is a buffer zone. A little bit in detail what they did. So, and all this was done while the inhabitants were still living inside the building. So they started building these platforms in front of it that became also the construction, in a way the construction scaffolding. They took away the old facade, replaced it by new floor-to-ceiling glazing, and then they added another facade, this winter garden facade, with these kind of curtains. So you would see from the inside, you would see before and after, though there's really this kind of amazing extra space that was added. And when you go into these winter gardens, this kind of extra space which has not a specific program, you can see that the inhabitants themselves really use it in all kind of different ways. And I do this very quickly so that you get an idea of how inventive these people are with this kind of space that was kind of like a gift for them. So some used it more like an addition to their living room, some more like a garden. So there's a whole, each apartment has its own way of dealing with this kind of extra space. And now, maybe you want to say something about how we did transform this into the exhibition.
Yeah. We thought, let's take one apartment and kind of show this magical act of expansion. So you can see this brown part as the existing and the new stuff in green. And we thought we need to transpose this to an exhibition space, so that people can actually understand how does it feel if your apartment suddenly becomes bigger. And yeah, you see the plan of the pavilion, and obviously this was an amazing opportunity. This is a once-of-a-lifetime situation that you can actually go into the holy grail of the Mies van Rohe pavilion. And obviously we needed to convince ourselves and needed a bottle of red wine to even dare to do that. And then when you look at the plan, you have the feeling it is somehow possible because, let me see, yes. So what we do is basically we place this wall here with images, you will see, and obviously it mirrors kind of the onyx wall, the famous one. I said, okay, if Mies placed this wall in the middle of the space, maybe he forgives us if we do the same thing. We don't know if he has, but let's take it from there. And then there's another thing here. Is this actually here or is this there?
Yeah, I think this is a kind of in-between stage.
Yeah, exactly.
We
So
couldn't find the last. We did the last adjustments on site, more or less, so there are no plans for the very last.
Yeah. Okay. So we placed another wall with images actually in front of here. So it's like that. So it's not that much, actually, what you do. And you see now a couple of shots done by Lucia de Mustairen this morning in the exhibition. So you see this is the wall that we placed inside the pavilion. And that wall is basically covered with large foils printed with big photographs of these apartments. Now we take a step back, and this wall basically allows us to divide the pavilion into a winter garden section, the new stuff that was added to the apartment, and everything behind that wall would be the existing part of the apartments of the people. And you see that the principle of this show is always that while we see the photographs here. These are printed. We place also in front elements that are actually real. So this one is a real plant. This is a real chair. This is in the photograph. And when you see it this way, you can see how suddenly the two-dimensional representation of the photograph merges with the three-dimensional objects placed in front of it. And that was the idea, because we wanted to give you a ride of how it must feel to be in these apartments. We visited this place and its magic, and as not everybody can go there, we thought maybe this is a way how to invite you into kind of virtual traveling somehow. And especially it works very well. It's very Instagrammable actually, because when you photograph your friend or yourself in front of one of these chairs and engage in some kind of pseudo-domestic activity, like this gentleman here, and you post this somewhere, you will get messages from your friends, what are you doing in Bordeaux? And I said, well, actually, I'm in Barcelona. And yeah, so basically the invitation is for the next 3 weeks, go to the pavilion and spend some time. You can watch television, as you see there. You can enjoy the sofas that are there, and these are all used furnitures. And we love a lot the dialogue between these used furnitures and the famous furniture that was obviously created for the pavilion. And there is an interesting parallel. Okay, we have 2 more minutes. There's a famous parallel. You know that more or less at the same time of the Barcelona pavilion, Mies van der Rohe built the Tugendhat in Brno. And this was this incredible floor plan. And the reason why we think it makes so much sense to make this encounter of this project by the GHI project from Bordeaux and Mies van der Rohe is that Mies made this building in the very year that the second CM Congress sort of articulated the existence minimum dogma for modernism, which would lead architects such as Ernst May in Frankfurt to build apartments of this size for a family of 4. Now we can see if we map this plan of the existence minimum flat inside the Tugendhat house, we can see that this apartment basically covers that space that we see here. And yeah, it's kind of interesting how many people you could fit in the Tugendhat villa based on the idea of existence minimum. And so there is this hypothesis that we say that what this project actually wants to tell us, that was, you know, the Bordeaux project, is actually that we can accord the same, let's say, the same standard, quality of life and luxury also for standard housing. We should do that. We should abolish the idea of existence minimum. We should go for the existence maximum. So we should take the encouragement of Mies and say, we can do that. We can afford that. Maybe that's the idea of affordable housing, to afford ourselves a common luxury. And that's why we think it's the appropriate place, the Mies van der Rohe Pavilion, to host a project such as the 530 apartments. And so you will find the pavilion with a couple of very modest modifications, like the red curtain that usually is there is now replaced by the silvery anti-glare curtain that hangs behind the winter garden of that project. And yeah, we think it looks pretty nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Ilka and Andreas, and yeah, you are all welcome to go and visit and take your own conclusions. We are here, a lot of people, and we wanted to create a conversation about housing about housing blocks from the 60s and their past, their present, and their future. And we wanted to start by landing it into the Barcelona case. So we have asked Sandra Vestraten, president of the Barcelona demarcation of the Order of Architects, to tell us about two of these housing developments that we know well, the locals, and you will get to know soon. And she will tell us about Bellvitge and about Montbau. And later on, Xavier Matilla, the chief architect of the city of Barcelona, will also tell us about Sud-oest del Besòs and overlooking what is the present and the future of housing developments in the city. So, Sandra, the floor is yours. Thank you. And we will end up with an open conversation. So you might re-ask each other whatever you like.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to participate in this meeting about the future of social housing and refurbishment. I'm going to focus in a well-known neighborhood in Catalonia, this Bellvitge. And between the 50s and the 70s, the Spanish dictatorship government built dozens of neighborhoods of social housing in the periphery of Barcelona, mainly built by private real estate companies and giving the houses in property. Most of those new districts were focused on anti-dictatorship fighting because of the lack of freedom, but also facilities, public space, and connectivity. The arrival of democracy was the opportunity for those neighborhoods to be integrated in the structure of the city. With the motto, the right to the city, all public administration worked to guarantee the arrival of public transport, access to public facilities, and urbanization of public spaces and gardens. Bellvitge is a good example of this effort of urban improvement, where the 90% of the neighborhood is free space and the people feel proud of living in a place with huge green spaces. In the image, you can understand the scale compared with the example of Barcelona grid. The success of Bellvitge urban integration is guaranteed in a book that celebrates the 50 years of the neighborhood. And here you can see the structure with the very important pedestrian areas. And you can see all this improvement along the democracy. But the celebration in the 50 years, and you can see here not only the history, but also some projects to improve the housing. Just in the democracy, the period, in the 80s and 90s, there was a public strategy to demolish and rebuild those complexes, bad construction quality and structural pathologies. This is an example, Can Clos, for example, in Barcelona and Polvorí, that the pathologies becomes a demolish and important transformation. But most of the neighborhoods were not demolished, and today the property of dwellings is mainly private. People own the house where they live. This is characteristic of the social housing Spanish model that is a handicap from the point of view of building refurbishment. The inhabitants of those neighborhoods cannot afford the cost of this kind of intervention. Also fragmentation of property makes nearly impossible to develop global action plans energy refurbishment. Only when they receive important grants from the public administrations, it's possible to increase the building isolation, taking advantage to introduce an image improvement, so as in the Canyelles and Fonsanta examples. But normally, the grants are not enough to introduce new structures like energy balconies and galleries, was the one adopted in Bordeaux. Today, we are working with the real estate metropolitan house to try to introduce global strategy of energy and accessibility intervention, take advantage of the opportunity opened by the European Next Generation Funds. Here, it's only an image. And also here in the Col·legi d'Arquitectes, we work with an important exhibition with Montbau. It's another district with a very good architecture, but the similar problems that, like Belviche, to try to incorporate this intervention with new space and new quality. And thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. So that was already an overview of some of the residential developments. And maybe Xavier Matilla, Chief Architect of the city, you can share with us some more of the present or the future. Or
yeah, thank you, Anna. Let's try to do that. First of all, thank you to COAC and Mies Award Foundation for your invitation. For me, it's not only a pleasure, it's an honor to have the opportunity to share this time and conversation with all of you. And I must say thank you for your project in Bordeaux. It's not only an amazing project, it has been, I would say, a very inspiring one that has opened a big discussion about how we must approach the renewal projects in mass housing estates. So I will try just to share with you two main ideas in order to show how are we approaching right now the issue of mass housing estates in Barcelona. The first idea, it's a kind of claim for an holistic approach to the problem of mass housing estates. What means that the challenge of this kind of neighborhoods, basically, of course, we can find several problems in this kind of neighborhoods, social ones, physical, construction, pathologies also. But in my opinion, the main challenge in this kind of neighborhoods is how are we able to improve the habitability in these areas. And when I talk about habitability, it's in the biggest sense of the word. So of course, it's about how are we able to improve the dwelling themselves, like the good practice in Bordeaux, improving their efficiency regarding consumption of energy and water and so on. Also increasing the room of these dwellings that usually are small size. But it's also about how are we able to introduce a kind of shared spaces inside the block in order to help people to increase this community sense of living in this kind of neighborhoods. And it's very important to approach the project of the ground floor of this kind of blocks, and it could be maybe a discussion about that, no? What about the ground floor of this kind of blocks? And also the roofs. We have a very big opportunity, and we are trying to activate these both spaces in the ground floor and also in the roof in order to increase the possibilities of interaction between the neighborhoods living in this kind of blocks. And the third question about habitability is public space, of course. How are we able to link what we are improving in the inner spaces and also in the outer spaces, not only in the different improvements in the dwellings in this kind of in-between spaces that you have generated in Bordeaux, but also improving the public space in order to rethink how are the streets in this kind of neighborhoods, which is the environmental conditions, which are the different comfortability that is able to increase in this kind of spaces, and also increase the social activity, increasing this kind of mixed-use condition of these neighborhoods that usually is a big problem that used to be, in some cases, only a residential one. These are the three ideas that we are approaching what we call regeneration, this kind of neighborhoods. And you can realize that it's about how are we able to improve the private realm, the community realm, and the public realm, and trying to generate links between these three different realms and spaces. And the second idea is about a fourth reconnection that I think is very, very important, because one of the main problems in the mass housing estates, specifically in Barcelona, but I would say that also or around the cities in Europe, comes from their own origin. I mean, these neighborhoods were developed like isolated pieces in the middle of the territory, completely separated from the existing city at that moment. But even when the city has arrived to these neighborhoods, there hasn't been a linkage between the two areas. So we have still a problem about the perception of the people have of these neighborhoods, that there is still remaining a kind of border, functional and mental border between these neighborhoods and the rest of the city. So it's for us very important to identify which are the projects in these boundary areas in order to generate new functional reconnections, to help people to understand that they have something to do going to the neighborhood and also coming out from there in order to regenerate this kind of relations between the existing ones. So this, yes, we only have 5 minutes, so the 2 main ideas was to claim this holistic approach to the renewal projects and also to reconnect these neighborhoods with the rest of the city. And this is the main ideas that we try to have always very clear when we approach that kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Xavier. Thank you. I will use these issues to re-ask, or maybe give the floor to the architects in Bordeaux, because in the Bordeaux project, the public space was treated, but maybe not as much as maybe you would have proposed. The mixed use, I mean, the ground floors do not have a use for people outside of the building. And also the old town, in your case, in Bordeaux case, is not that the new town has arrived to the developments, but they are very close, the old town and the development. But also you see a big change of fabric, and the urban fabric is radically different. So whoever of you would like to elaborate on that?
I would say that we think that what is important, it is to start from inside, from the further as possible inside.
Can you hear him?
No, quite well.
Masks is a lot. What the masks is.
It's okay, no? It's better?
Take the mask off.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Yes. Try again.
It's okay now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
much
it's better.
Thank
So
you.
it was a mask. Yeah, what I was saying it is that we think that what it is really important, it is to start from inside and really further as possible inside. So it means that we are convinced that the conditions for a good collective life starts with a very good individual life. So we really believe that, and it was very much the case in France, that it is not sufficient to just think to the public space and to stop at the facade of the buildings to make the things better. We think we have to start from the inside. And this is for us very, very important. Because it's what is important, it is to say we should not look this big mass housing as mass housing. We should consider that it is families. One family, another family, another family. So each time the same continuous attention to the inhabitant, not 500 inhabitants, but one inhabitant 500 times, with the same attention, the same energy for each of them. And this processus will offer first good individual quality for each one, but collectively it will produce another image that from this image it will be possible to go outside the building and then to consider how the city can grow from this system. We think this is very, very important for us, starting from the inside. And this is extremely important. It is not possible to consider that somebody that is in a situation inside his flat where it's not so fine, there is not enough space, there is too much noise, or the window is too small, or he cannot have a possibility to have some pleasure to go to a balcony or a winter garden. We think that this quality is absolutely necessary for him to go in the public space and to have a collective feeling that it is nice as possible. So we really believe in the fact that we have to start from that point. And if we consider the suburbs in France, during 30 years, they have improved the streets, they have made new roundabouts with plenty of art pieces on the roundabouts, etc., etc. And sometimes they have painted the facade in yellow, in brown, and sometimes the face of a famous painter or poet on one wall. Clearly, this has not changed the situation. It means that we have to think that from an existing situation today, it is possible by transformation, by adding to an existing situation, by transformation, it is possible to do much better than what a new standard housing is doing today. So it is a plus to add. You have one, you add 50% to the one, and you have 150%. What happens in France, we add one, we take it down, and we rebuild one. At the end, you have one, you spend two more times more money, more energy, more materials, and you have less than one you can have by addition from the existing.
That's very clear, super interesting. You have been working on a housing model which is rental. The case we have here, and it was said, it's that this social housing were sold to very affordable prices, and they are owned by the families. And in some cases, after a few years, they could resell the apartments, or they had to stay, or whatever. But this has led to a fragmentation of the property. And so there is, all this difficulty of putting together all the community, because they are a community of owners. They have to all together decide that they want to do this. And there is a kind of a difficult task. In some cases, this is overdone. They achieve it, but then the cases we have had, they are just doing all this energy efficiency thing, like enveloping the building and that's it. I don't know. Do you have any advice, or how can we here in Barcelona overcome this situation of fragmentation and convince the people there that they should go for something more ambitious? I don't know, Christophe, if you were very much into day-to-day conversation with the neighbors. Do you have some advice?
What I can say about the back of the experience in Bordeaux is when you start to exchange with the people who are living in the building, they understand clearly the benefit of the project and this kind of process. Because usually the technical approach to change the envelope of the building or to make the energy efficiency, it's a global goal that everyone understands, like is almost a culture now. But in fact, you don't go on the topic of the housing and the life. So showing this kind of project allows the people also to understand the benefit they can have, and also to having a community project or to having a community spirit. You have to get a common project. You have to be part of something in common. Otherwise, is decided before, or I don't know how it works. But to be part of a community, you must share something. And maybe this kind of process also allow the people who are not thinking that the people can do the architecture themselves, but with the skill of the architect, maybe the performance and the life in the building can be increased. And so I can say that the people understand clearly the issue and the benefit of this kind of process. And for example, in Bordeaux, just about the process, we did during the study at the beginning of the project, we did a prototype on the first floor of the extension of one apartment. As Jean-Philippe was saying, you do one very precisely as better as you can, so the people can come and visit it. And we didn't have a lot of problem to be accepted or to, for the process of democratic issue in this process. The people were like, from the beginning, they were convinced to move forward.
So if I get you right, you think this trying to improve the community life might help getting into it? So try to have those neighbors become a community. So maybe the use of the rooftops or create community spaces, or how do we handle that?
No, I'm saying that the process that you engage with the people, it must be a community project, of course, because when you are staying in a building, if you engage architects or people who are working with you to set up a project as an experience, of course, this experience transforms yourself and you feel maybe you're part of this community more than in the past. And also the border between what I'm trying to say is the border between individual and common or collective or public, is not so clear, this border. Because, for example, what Jean-Philippe is explaining is to feel good with the others, you have to feel good at home also. So the work on the housing is having a role, something to do with the public life and the common life also. Because if you feel better at home, for example, with more space, you see in the picture of Andrea and Ilka, you saw a bar in the winter garden. That means that people are inviting the neighbor, and the social life is increasing also. And doing a project is also a common goal.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Just to, if I may add something,
sure.
It's clear that you are right that working with several ownership, it's totally different as working for a single owner, which has also public subsidies. So it's clear that first it's important to get the trust from the owners to this project and what they will benefit in doing a renovation in a very different way, which at the end has also the same goal of improving the technical quality of buildings, but with the same amount of money you can give more. But it's important also to identify where are also the concrete problems. Of course, it's very difficult for a community to agree on one single goal. But it's first an issue of organization, but it's also an issue of most of the time of money, because most of these ownerships, they don't have the same possibility of investment than the public ownership. So it's important to, and we work together in, for example, in Bordeaux or with the Plus in Paris, to see how we could find some possibilities of developing for these ownerships a kind of model where they could find also the incomes or the subsidies to be more ambitious in their transformation. And we found out that looking carefully to most of the situation, it's important to see, for example, if there is a little potential, or much bigger, but a little potential of densification, of increase of the number of dwellings, which can be on the roof, which can be blocked on the blind walls, which can be on the ground floor, because as you say also very often the relation between these blocks and the ground floor is not very satisfying. So there are different possibilities that can be studied, and if you look at the Plus Paris, which is in the exhibition, you can see a range of these possibilities, And doing that, these ownerships, they can also create their own incomes by selling the apartments to subsidize the renovation of their own apartments. But for this, it needs that there is a special organization, and they must be probably helped, and why not by also the public, by the municipalities, to why not to try to offer this kind of service of organization, or how to create this model, economical model that would help to make these renovations. So we don't have a concrete experience, but we studied through case studies these situations, and it's clear that there is quite often these possibilities on the existing blocks.
Yeah, there have been some attempts of organizing things like that near Barcelona in Cornellà, for instance, and this is a bit the way they do it now. Like the city council is putting the money in advance, and then the neighbors have to give it back little by little. There are legal concerns because then they should not resell the apartment. Remember, they own the apartment, so gentrification is always there. Is something that can jump into these buildings once they get refurbished. So this is very much an issue. Have you faced issues of gentrification here in this project, or?
Not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all. It was we come from the Taller de Arquitectura, and 30.
You need to make the microphone.
Take the mask off. Yeah.
You hear me?
Much better, yeah.
Yeah. We come from the Taller of Arquitectura of Ricardo Bofill, and I remember 38 years ago I was near the Valdenset, and I passed just here 38 years after. And everything is changing very simply, because yes, attraction of this building is so important, because the people seems very in a good way inside. That the connection of the city is not incorrect, is near perfect, in fact. And I don't remember what I have to say before, because I forget what I have to say, because I forget your answer, but I think I have a good answer, if you repeat.
I was asking about, but I guess the issue there is that it's social housing, so it's social rental, so the cost is fixed.
Yeah.
In our case, let's say, the renovation of those buildings,
but
risks to fall into reselling them to higher prices and then provoke gentrification.
I remember now. Sorry, I have a fish brain. No, because Ricardo Bofill explained that Valdenset at the beginning, it was social housing, and a lot of people buy the apartment very low, but after that they send the apartment, and the gentrification come with that. It's different for us because we rent all the time, not we. The owner rent all the time, because we have a different politic of social housing in France, which is very important and very interesting. But we need maybe to change the rule of this kind of building, because what is interesting, that means that the project of Ricardo Bofill proposed to the poor people to have access to something, and he gives the possibility to each people to increase their capacity, financial capacity. That means that they can grow up and change and move with that. And very often the problem of the social housing, that means that all the people don't move now, because the social life in general, there is no lift from l'ascenseur social.
The bottom to...
Yeah, that means that people stay inside. And unfortunately, or by chance, I don't know, if you can have you grow up in the social
Ladder.
level, you can grow up with the question of the propriété.
Ownership.
Ownership.
Yeah, that it's a way for that, and I think it's interesting for.
But it's clear that gentrification is a risk, which is also due to the overvalue of the land in the cities, and this is a problem that we can observe everywhere. But we can also think that finally, if this transformation could be massive, so it means that concern a huge amount of dwellings in the middle of the city, but also in the first outskirts. In a way, it would be probably it would be less selective, because in a way everyone could have this kind of good housing. The problem is when you remove someone from this transformation, a family, to send this family in a place which is much less interesting, to give it to a family which is who have more income. So it's why it's important to think to this transformation in very massive programs, and not just to think to make some very exemplary operations. And this is sincerely, it's very much possible, because we know that in the very near future, all the buildings have to reach better standards in terms of saving energy, of improvement in of low carbon, and so on. So, and just in working with these works to do, but in doing them in a very different way, it's already a chance to go towards this transformation. So it's first also a problem of a huge ambition, and a huge also political vision to push the housing as a first topic of interest today for the society.
Sure.
I think it's, in fact, it's a question for me. It is, how can we get out of this system of today? Because in fact, today, all Europa, we can just talk about bad housing. All the cities, everywhere, it could be Berlin, it could be Madrid, Rome, London, Zurich, etc. They are claiming about how it is possible to make affordable housing. Because in fact, we are in situations where the flat becomes a financial product. And the flat is smaller and smaller, and worse and worse. So there is no more good flats. You have homeless, you have a little better, and even the bourgeois flat is not very good today. So since 40, 50 years, the quality of flats and apartments decrease. When we look at Hansa-Viertel in 54, 57, the flats by Vago, Sharon, Alto, etc. are much better than the flats we are producing today. So all, as architects, we try to go out of this system. It means that actually the flats are like they are because there are not enough of them. Families, they cannot live in the center of the city because it's only small flats, and they have to go outside in little pavilions in the countryside to live, and they have a lot of problems to live in these conditions. So how we can get out of this system? So it means that we have to invent new situations. Situations of transformation are one of them. It means that we have at one moment to say that we have to take away all these constraining norms, regulations, this dimension of flats, etc., and we have even being extremely economic by system of transformation, by more simple system of ventilation, of climate control, etc., to provide good flats, because all as architects we know how they could be, but just to live away and to get away with all these regulations that actually are producing the financial product of a flat.
Yeah, super. Christophe, you wanted to add something? And
yes,
then
I
Andreas?
think the question of the gentrification is about what the people can afford in terms of housing. So, for example, in Bordeaux, they can afford an amount of rental price, and the rental price stayed the same after the transformation. So the people can keep and continue their life and their story, their personal story in the building. In the case in Barcelona you are showing, I don't know, but if the people can afford to have a really good benefit, as Jean-Philippe is saying, I'm sure you don't have the risk, and the gentrification is not a danger. And even if 10% of people get more money, they come to the building, is good also.
I'm not sure that gentrification is a bad thing.
Yeah, it's not risk.
Because it's a kind of mobility everywhere.
Andreas.
What? Gentrification.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I would agree, actually. I think many of this, does this work?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, good. And in many of these cases, I think gentrification would actually help to create a greater mix, social mix.
Yeah.
And I think it's the problem of these grand ensembles is that you have the same kind of strata of society put together. It's kind of a camp without a fence. I think we have to question that. People of all walks of life should live together. In Munich, they have a model which I like a lot, which is called the Munich model, where a private investor that makes private housing actually has to add 20 or has to include 20% of affordable housing. So you have maybe very rich people living in there, but they have to also notice that there's also people with less money. So that's the first step. But you know, the thing that actually concerns me a lot, and when we think about this project, we have never met somebody who didn't say, this is a great project. The approach is fantastic. We should do this again. It's like a case study. But it's not used as a case study. It has stayed singular. It hasn't been copied, although it's so common sense that you realize, okay, for the same money that you use in order to tear a building down, put the people in hotels that live there, and build a new building, you can actually you can renovate and enlarge and improve in terms of living standards 3 to 4 apartments. So economically, this is so obviously better than the demolition scenario. Yet Bernard Blanc, the director of their client, of Aquitanis, a housing company in Bordeaux, when he invited all his colleagues from social housing companies in France, said, look what we could do here. This didn't cost much more money. It was just a process, and I can tell you how it worked. Would you consider to do the same? I said, no. Why should we? Why should we give these people more space?
Yeah.
So the cynicism is so obvious. And I was wondering, today is Black Friday. So we're basically giving an incentive to consume more. And if you compare this to the project, and obviously the building industry and also the demolition industry cannot like your project. They obviously must hate it because you cut their market. If you avoid demolition, then the demolition contractor has no job. So I'm quite sure these people have a lobby in politics, and they will have an interest to avoid this kind of thing. So the only thing that will make this situation change is not, Jean-Philippe, if you build even with less money, you are building already with very little money. No, it's a macroeconomic situation that has to change. We need to tax new building higher than transforming buildings. We need to create economical incentives that make it actually much more attractive economically to not demolish, to transform buildings. And then your project that you did you showed this in the Plus Paris project. Can you talk a little bit about this project? Because you were basically showing that you can satisfy the need for new housing in Paris by transforming existing buildings that are already there in Paris alone. You actually don't need new housing, to basically satisfy that need. So that's revolutionary. So why the hell
Andreas,
does nobody do it?
You can speak, because my exotic English is not perfect, so you know now the plus Paris, so you can... No, we try to work not at the scale of a building, at the scale of a city. And it's exactly the same. You can take case by case, each case, and consider the benefit or not of each situation. And after that, if you consider a city, a global city, if you make very precisely one area, one building, one room, where is the benefit we can have? Sometimes there is no benefit possible because sometimes it's quiet and it's okay. But at the end, the addition is very amazing because in this study we consider near 1,048 situations in Paris and around Paris. We consider 435,000 existing housing, and we find the possibility without modifying nothing about the organization of the urban organization. We find the possibility to create 135,000 housing more. We don't cut tree. We don't make new road. We don't make nothing. Just place and consider in the same time the capacity of existing, the benefit of them, because if they have the view or facilities or many things like that, we conserve that, we increase that, and in the same time, we find the possibility to create more. And these two interesting posts. The quality of the housing, because the existing dwellings are like in this kind of project, in Tourbois-le-Prêtre, in Saint-Nazaire, or in Bordeaux, so we give the new habitability of the dwellings and the pleasure to live. And the new one are in the same way. We don't make little money. That's a part of the quality of... and we create also the possibility to make money with a new building to pay the transformation of existing things. That means that in global economy, it's very simple, very simple. It could be very simple. So what is totally crazy is everybody don't care about that. Everybody don't care about the question of economy. In France, we spend near during 10 years, we spend 23 billion of euro for demolish 22 billion of dwelling. That means that we pay for demolition. We pay for demolition. Where we are on the moon. We are stupid or what? What happens? And it's not specific of in France. It's you speak about Black Friday. Yeah, it's Black Friday every day. No, it's dangerous. We are not. We are very sad with that. Very sad because that means we work on that since 25 years. They are a great project, but we do near 1,000 dwellings in 25 years.
I think it's really important to start with the idea of extremely careful attention to the city. The city is a growing system, extremely complex, and we really believe that this complexity of the city is a richness for the imagination and the attention by architects. It means that the city is full of thousands and thousands of precise situations. And for each of these precise situations, it's possible to consider what exists, if it is good, if it is not good, if something missing or if something is not missing, if we can, in that situation, add 5% of new flats to the existing situation. In that situation, 10%, in another one, 20%, or perhaps 50%. And then, case by case, precisely, improve the city. And this is much better than any urban plan or master plan. It is only by precision, close to the inhabitants, and with this question of economy, but economy with the ambition to improve the situation. But by the way, also we answer to some questions that are actually very present, like saving materials, using 80 times less materials than new construction, making CO2 consumption lowest as possible.
Gotten to.
Yeah, and this is so we think that it is a sort of approach that it is very important. That means also that we have to start from small to go to big, instead of looking at the city from far away above and trying to see what is below.
Super, so inspiring. We're about to reach the end of the session. I would ask the people in the audience if they have a question to please raise your hands, and you will get a mic. We have also some people following the event online. But just before going to the question in the audience, I don't know if Sandra or Xavier might have any reply or short question or comment to put. Yeah, sure.
Briefly, Anna?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. No, I completely agree with one thing that Jean-Philippe said at the beginning, that we must start from inside. In fact, I would say that if we don't have good housing, we cannot reach a good city. So the city starts in the housing. Yeah. I completely agree. Right now in Barcelona, housing is one of the main issues of our urban agenda. So we are working in two different strategies. The first is increasing the social housing stock that was really short at the beginning. We only had 5,000 social housing in 2015. And we are expecting to increase this social housing in 2023 with 12,000 new social housing in the city. But the main problem we have with the renewal projects like this, and Sandra Anna said before, we have a single ownership in this mass housing estates. So we always need to reach a complete agreement with all the neighborhoods inside the block to be able to get the project. So it's a huge effort that we need to make with every project.
Did you ever try to give them a financial incentive to those who would?
Yeah, it's always with public financial, because people living there hasn't the economical capacity to afford this kind of interventions. So this is a claim, because we haven't had an important public effort from the different administrations in Spain. So it's very difficult that a single city is able to have a public budget to tackle this huge challenge with mass housing estates. So it's very important, and from the different professional associations also, we are trying to push in order to get a huger effort, public effort, in order to have this financial capacity to help to renew all this kind. So I think the challenge is how are we able to open a public policy with a very important budget that will be able to open a new processes. So from Barcelona, we are working on it. We are reaching till we are able to reach with our budget, so it's important. But we always need that the regional government and the central government in Spain also push with their bigger capacity than the different cities. And we have another kind of problems. It's about urbanistic regulatory in this kind of mass housing estates. And I would like also to know about your project in Bordeaux, because in mass housing estate in Barcelona, the blocks are usually surrounded by a public space area that it's very difficult to occupy with a private use. So it's not impossible, but it's a tricky movement, urbanistical movement, that we always need to justify what we are occupying public space and generating a new piece of building that will be a private use. So it's a kind of difficult that we also have to manage.
I mean, if this is a problem, this kind of fragmentation because of private ownership, Of course, this is super difficult to solve in this, but I mean, then one should also consider, is there a possibility for the future that even with private ownership, maybe there's a split, so okay, there's private ownership, but really the facade or what's being built maybe on top is not private. This is something public, and that there's a kind of split between private and public, so that it's maybe easier to come to some kind of conclusion. But this would be something to think about for future projects. Of course, the projects that are already totally fragmented, it's difficult to...
Yeah.
I mean, already in today's economy of private housing, even if you live together with 11 people, for instance, like we in one building, and each of the apartments are owned individually, but then there's zones that are called Gemeinschaftseigentum, like common property, like the staircases and stuff, and I think that's the same here. So why don't exactly then declare the entire space from the facade on towards where the winter garden goes as this kind of common zone that is also common property, and the financial incentive could go in the financing of that, and whoever doesn't want it doesn't get a winter garden. I would love to see the person that refuses that.
Yeah.
No, but
Wouldn't this be really interesting? You build a house like once, like this, with this kind of
Holes of those.
some of them have, some of them don't, and I guess like 1 year later, the ones who don't have said, "I vouch for it."
Yeah,
I get in my winter
I guess you
garden?
cannot do that, but it will be interesting. Try to.
I mean, the building was kind of in the Bordeaux building, I mean, you first built these kind of, the floors of the winter gardens. So if this is something that could be built very easily, and the people who want to build, they become their winter garden, and the others stay with the old facade.
It would be interesting.
I mean, if you think a project not, okay, now we do the project, but over a certain amount of time, and you start in a more incremental way, maybe that could be
It's quite difficult to do because for structural reasons, you have to make to report the forces from the top.
No, I mean, you have to. I think you have to do this kind
just
of like
the slabs,
like a shelf,
like the slabs,
like the shelf, but not yet filled.
Yeah, but I think also that there is no standard answer. We have worked with Frédéric and Christophe on 3 projects. We have studied some others that were not done, and we have seen that each time it was different. Each time there is the typology of the building is different. Sometimes it's a tower, sometimes it is a slab. So in our case, it has been most of the time public housing, and we never work on private properties. But what we really believe that if we precisely start to work on one precise case, any case it could be, if we really work on it, there will be always a solution. We cannot say it will be winter gardens everywhere. There is no. Sometimes without a winter garden, it's already good, and perhaps you can do.
There's no need.
There is no need of winter garden. So what we really believe it is that at the moment where we put all our energy on one precise situations, we will always find the solution. We will always find the solution, and that I am absolutely sure of that. It is about this common energy, but also not to make a sort of very controlled frame. It means that for the people, the architects will work on these situations, that have a sort of freedom in also to see precisely from the observation, from listening, from talking with the inhabitants, to understanding precisely the situations, how they could come to the best solution. And I think this solution is always possible. I think we need absolutely to be totally positive and optimistic in all these situations.
Very inspiring. I will now... sorry.
No, but just an addition, because it's actually interesting, because I thought that Christophe has shown in his French pavilion at the Biennale that just finished, examples how in other places, like in Vietnam, people expand their apartments, and it's really interesting in this kind of guerrilla style like they do. And I don't know exactly about the ownership question there, but can you elaborate a little bit, just as a possibility?
Yes, in fact, they do for 40 years. They transform their apartment to make a new space individually. And at the end, the result, we can consider it's a common or a public project because they do it for 40 years. They own the apartment and they individually plug new rooms about the needs they've got for the family.
And so their neighbor maybe doesn't do it, but they do it anyway.
Most of the buildings are all extended, but it's individual. There is no link between the extension.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see something of that in the interior blocks of the Eixample grid because you cannot see it from the street. So some people are just like building and rebuilding and building, and then this is something you mentioned that how much we have to regulate or not, or interesting. But I will, if you don't mind, give the floor to someone in the audience.
Thank you. My name is Alfonso Gomez. I'm the Dean of Architecture and Design at Javeriana, Bogotá. So I come from Colombia. And this is a kind of asking for help question, because we have this matter in our government, because we have the Ministry of Housing, like a kind of fighting against the town hall with the mayor, because the mayor is establishing one existence minimum area of 42 square meters, but the ministry told her that she cannot do that because with that money, the ministry can build 15 square meters housing. That is the matter that we have in Colombia right now, because the social housing is not social at all. It's a kind of economical issue. So the ministry is worried about building a lot of housing with, I don't know, 10 or 12 or 15 square meter housing. And the mayor is telling, okay, we need more space, like this project. Social people need more space than higher income people. So I would like to ask you for an advice for our government in order to focus on the social matter of the housing, but not only in the economical issue of our country.
Change your government.
We're trying to do that since, I don't know, 15 years ago, but we haven't made it right now, unfortunately. But thank you.
What we know, in fact, we don't like classifications. We don't like the idea of social housing in France. We like the idea of good housing. That's all. And in France, it was interesting because in the 30s, it was not called social housing, HLM. It was called HBM, which was habitation bon marché, that was affordable housing.
Not expensive.
Yeah, so the question was just to say, okay, it is good, it is possible to make a good apartment, a good flat, that is not too expensive at all. So there is it could be something poor, something not poor, something rich, something anyone, because the flat is good. So what we are happy in this project in Bordeaux, it is that now, with this addition, with this transformation, the flats are very good. I think they are much better than many very bourgeois apartments in Bordeaux with this transformation. So actually, it is fine because it is the people that were already there that are still there. I don't know, but for 50 years more, it's good housing. And we hope that there will be change in the flats, and perhaps if there are more, there will be more place. So this idea of just making good housing, for us, it is what is the most interesting.
Maybe you send your government to Bordeaux for a field trip? They probably give you a tour. Huh? Christophe would do that.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. Also, the food is good. So.
And the wine. I don't know if there's one more question on the audience here. Yes, please.
Hello. First of all, congratulations for the installation and the project, of course, that we have learned so much from it for years now. And thank you very much for bringing the question of demolishing, never demolishing in a moment where cities are being demolished so fast, but also there have been voices here and in other countries saying that we should stop demolishing cities, no? My question would be if you have experience about trying not to demolish other more humble maybe architectures that are not necessarily these kind of blocks, architectures that are more from the working class, from the beginning of the 20th century or even before. These kind of architectures where we see that have been and are being demolished right now in this city, for example, very often, no? Because they are sometimes even almost invisible, no? So the question would be if you have any experience with that. And another thing that it's only a puntualization in terms of gentrification and this city and others in particular, like New York or, I don't know, in France, in Europe, around. It's that actually what is kicking us out from the cities is not necessarily the size of the apartments, but actually is tourism. But that's another question, no? Thank you.
I think never demolish is quite clear. No, it means that it's a principle without any consideration of, because at the moment you start to make a selection globally on little housing, little houses, housings for workers, big neighborhoods. At this moment you don't make this precise work of looking at every situation and decide from in every case what is needed to do. So probably in general a very, very, very small amount of construction need to be demolished because they are in so good state that you cannot use it anymore. But it's in our experience, but it's so small that we should not talk about that and just say, okay, the principle is to transform because it's most sustainable, and we have not to discuss anymore about that. It's a principle, and we should work on that way and not just turn around to say, okay, but yes, but is it better or is it more beautiful or not? No, it must be a totally change in the way of thinking. We have to think that it's today a great benefit to do with what we have, to consider the value of it, to consider the potential, to check very carefully what is missing, what should be improved, and to make this very serious work on the existing situations. It's today the way to do.
And I think it can be a house, a little building, a bigger building. It could be a tree. It could be a rose tree. It could be a garden. I think it could be some animals living in some parts of the city. And I think it's just to be kind. This idea of kindness towards the city and all the people and the environment. I think it's today it's really up to date to talk about recycling. We don't really like this question of recycling because we think that before recycling there is reusing. And this is extremely important because recycling finally it means that we should demolish in order to recycle. And I think the first point it is to reuse the city and to discover inside the city the fabulous situations and the fabulous capacities that we can reuse with more freedom than the standard situations.
I think we're going to... You have a question? Okay, one question, short one, and we're going to leave it here. This is the last one, okay? So please.
Just a second, you're getting a microphone.
My agents, Jornello Pastor, we are working since 2014 in the neighborhood of La Castellane, 15e arrondissement, Marseille, quartier nord. Vous connaissez bien, peut-être, non? There is a neighborhood of 1,200 dwellings there. We have proposed in the project of renovation of the neighborhood to demolish 10% of the dwellings because we think it's necessary to open the quartier, la cité, to the outside. We have been working with le bailleur, with the municipality, avec tout le monde. At the end of the process, we went to Paris to present the project to the ANRU, l'Agence nationale de renouvellement urbain.
Our friends.
Our friends, your friends, our friends also. And when we arrived there, they said no, absolutely no. You don't have to demolish 10% of the dwellings. You have to demolish 50% of the dwellings if you want the money. That's it. In 2 months, we will go again to present the project modified with some more demolitions, but I would like you to come with us to explain them.
Probably we cannot help with
No.
because
when there is 1% demolitions, we are against.
Sure.
No, but it's clear that it's a big problem.
It's clear because the most that I hate is a phrase that I hear always. Il faut démolir pour changer l'image du quartier.
Never.
You have to demolish to change the image of the
What you have to
neighborhood.
change is the quality of life of the inhabitants, not the image of the neighborhood. That's what we have to change. No? But it's very difficult to work with avec l'État.
Or if you change the quality of life, the image of the neighborhood will change accordingly.
Sure.
But you start with the right kind of thing. Yeah?
We have a lot of, for example, because you say, when you start to say, we think that it should be necessary to demolish 10%. And most of the time we have seen that when you start to demolish, even half of percent, it's already too much because you start to give this idea of demolition. The idea of demolition is an idea of violence. You have somebody that has a friend, is living there, and 20 centimeters on the right, suddenly his flat disappears.
That's your first picture.
For us, we always think, perhaps we think that it could be good to open here, but we always think, no, there is another possibility. If we want to pass, we can avoid to demolish. And this, for us, is very important. So if you want to fight with us saying, okay, we come back with a project of zero demolition, at the end, we will win in front of the ANRU, all together. I am sure.
Good. We leave it here.
J'aimerais le croire.
Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. That was super inspiring. Everyone was taking notes, so let's hope we can change the world. Thank you.